So we'll be today in Deuteronomy chapter 19 and Deuteronomy chapter 20. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today, we've already kind of talked about, but we're going to emphasize some points here. A lot of this first part of this class, we're going to look at a lot of the history that's surrounding the cities of refuge. And then waging war, we'll make some points on that. And then if we get an opportunity to, we'll go into additional laws that are in chapter 19. But those are the two topics that I kind of need to cover here today, is the cities of refuge and then waging war, and how they're supposed to go about waging war. And then we'll talk about some applications for each one of these that I believe that we can apply to our own lives. All right, before we get started, I'm going to talk to y'all a little bit and kind of set the stage here. Have you ever been accused of something you just didn't do? I think we all have. We've all been accused. And with social media and everything else that's out there, it can go very quickly, right? Okay? That people can pounce on it and then you're convicted before it's even said and done, okay? Again, one of the things that I like to do is watch shows that talk about murders that have happened. And I know it's but it's kind of what I do. I'm a police officer, so that's kind of what we do. We look at those kind of things. And one of the ones that I've watched here recently was the John Benet Ramsey case, okay? Again, and I looked at that whole thing and I reviewed all that was being said, and then there was things in that show that I never heard about in the news media, that they never reported, that came out. That, about 10 days after her murder, they had the DNA already there that exonerated basically her parents. It was never revealed. It was just continued there. And so, again, what we're going to look at is not accusations, but this has happened. But again, what's supposed to be done if somebody is actually done something, and how this is supposed to be done. And then we'll kind of look at accusations here in a few minutes. But if you'll turn over to Deuteronomy 19, 1 through 3, it says there, "When the Lord your God cuts off the nations whose lands the Lord your God is giving you, and disposes them and settles in their cities and in their houses, you shall set aside for yourself 3 cities in the midst of your land, which the Lord your God will give you to possess. You shall prepare the roads for yourself and divide into 3 regions the territories of your land, which the Lord your God will give you as an inheritance, so that anyone who commits manslaughter may flee there." Okay? So a little bit of history. I want to go into a little bit of history because I think it's important to see that this isn't the first time that these cities of refuge have been talked about in the Scripture. And so in Exodus 21, 12 through 13, it also talks about it there. It says, "He who strikes someone so that he dies shall certainly be put to death. Yet if he did not lie in wait for him, but God caused him to fall into his hands, then I will appoint you a place in which he may flee." So all the way back in Exodus, we see that there's going to be these cities of refuge set up. And again, in Deuteronomy, Moses is again instructing them that this is supposed to happen. And then going to Numbers 35, 9 through 11, when they were the first attempt to go into the promised land, he again tells them that there's going to be these 3 cities. And it says, "Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speaking to the sons of Israel, and say to them, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall select for yourself cities to be your cities of refuge, so that one who commits manslaughter by killing a person unintentionally may flee there." And then again, in Deuteronomy 4, verse 41 through 43, we see that Moses sets up the original 3 on the east side of the Jordan River. And it says there, "Then Moses set apart 3 cities across the Jordan. To the east for one to flee there who unintentionally killed his neighbor, without having hatred for them in time past, and by fleeing to one of these cities he might live. Bezer in the wilderness of the plateau for the Reubenites, Ramoth in Gilead for the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan for the Manasseites. Sorry. Whew. I finally got it out. So we see that 3 of them were already set up. Now you see on this map, there's 3 more because when they actually enter the land, we see that they're going to set up another 3 on the other side so that it's relatively available for anybody to get to them. And so they don't have to, it's still a pretty good distance that they have to travel, but it's not all the way over to the other side of the Jordan River. So in Deuteronomy 8 through 10, it says, and it talks about this in Deuteronomy 19, 8 through 10, that as their territory enlarges, that they're going to add 3 more cities. And I take this as any time that they're going to enlarge their borders, that they're going to do it, because we'll see here in the future that when Solomon and David enlarged their borders, they don't do this. They never establish any more cities. They just establish these 3 more. And if the Lord your God enlarges your territory, just as he has sworn to your fathers, and gives you all the land that he has promised to give your fathers, if you carefully follow all the commandments which I am commanding you today, to love the Lord your God and walk in his ways, then you shall add 3 more cities for yourselves besides these 3, so innocent blood will not be shed in the midst of the land which the Lord your God is giving you an inheritance, and a guilt for bloodshed will not be on you. And then turn over to Joshua 20, verse 7 through 9. We see that they actually established these cities. And it says there in Joshua 20, 7 through 9, so they set apart Kadesh in Galilee, in the hill country of Naphtali, and Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim, and Kirith-Jearim in Hebron in the hill country of Judah. And beyond the Jordan, east of Jericho, they designated Bezer in the wilderness of the plains of the tribe of Reuben, and Ramoth in Gilead from the tribes of Gad, and Golan in Bashan in the tribes of Manasseh. These were the designated cities for all the sons of Israel, that for a stranger who resides among them, so that whoever kills a person unintentionally may flee and not die for the hand of the avenger of the blood until he stands before the congregation. All right, so these are established. Again, and we can go into some history. David and Solomon, again, expanded the border, so, probably there should have been more established, but also what it tells them that they need to have good roads. And in Deuteronomy 19, verse 3, it says, you shall prepare the roads for yourself and divide into 3 regions the territory for your land, which the Lord your God will give you as an inheritance, so that anyone who commits manslaughter may flee this. A commentary on this about the road says, the Jews inform us that the roads in the cities of refuge were made very broad, 32 cubits, and even so that they should be no impediments in the way, and were constantly kept in good repair, so that these people could get there easily, and there would be nothing in their way of getting there. So, kind of wanted to go over that so that we could get a good basis of where we are. And then, what were these cities for? I think we've already established what they were for. Go ahead, Brian. Protect it.
Take you out, and he said, no, you can go to the refuge city.
Yep. Again, and Deuteronomy 19, 4 through 6, it kind of talks about this, and it goes into some language that I think we need to kind of look at, because it talks about the avenger of blood. And there's a specific reasons why this was so important for them to establish the cities, because of the culture back then. The avenger of blood was an appointed member of the family designated to protect the honor and lives of the family. His interest would not be in gathering evidence, but to avenge the honor of the family. Okay? And the commentary that I looked at to kind of prepare this lesson said they all took this from Genesis 9, verse 6 is where they got this from. Okay? That it says, whoever sheds human blood, by man his blood shall be shed, for the image of God he made in mankind. Okay, so there was a avenger of blood that was supposed to be assigned in the family, and his job was not to really collect evidence. It was to take care of this guy, kill this guy because he killed one of our relatives. And so these are why these cities were so important and why they were set up, so that they could do this. And so, you know, as I was going through this, I kind of was like, man, I've seen this before. And again, and I believe it was an old movie, and I believe it was Zorro that I saw this, that somebody was being chased and they ran into a church and couldn't go in there, right? Okay? And if you look at, and I looked this up because I wanted to see, is this still practiced today? And it is. In the Catholic Church, they still have a practice that an archbishop can, if somebody comes into the church and asks for this to be a refuge, he can assign it as a refuge, and that person will not be harmed while they're in that presence. So it still goes on today. This article was in 2016 that I found, so I'm assuming that it is still going on today in what is going on. And so this is something that they believe in. And again, we see that they needed protection from the kinsman. My place here. Okay, and then it also in Deuteronomy 19, verse 5, gives us an example of what they're talking about. And many of the verses we looked at, they're talking about manslaughter. It was done accidentally. And again, in Deuteronomy 19, verse 5, it points it out of what they're exactly looking for. As when a person goes to the forest with his friends to cut wood, and his hand swings the axe to put down the tree, and the iron head splits off the handle and strikes his friend so that he dies, he may flee to one of these cities and live. The commentary that I was looking at to kind of put this whole lesson together says this: it was not the next of kin was deprived of the right of blood revenge, but only that the restraints were placed in the discriminating the exercise of the rights. Okay, again, there was still something going to happen, but it was to investigate what was going to go on. And so, what to do with the guilty who seek protection in the city of refuge? Okay, let's say that they're just flat out guilty. Okay, they did it. They committed murder. In Deuteronomy 19, verse 11 through 13, it talks about this. It says, but if there is a person who hates his neighbor and waits in ambush for him to and rises up against him and strikes him so that he dies, and he flees to one of these cities, then the elders of the city shall send men and take him from there and hand him over to the avenger of blood so that he may die. You shall not pity him, but you shall eliminate the guilty for the bloodshed of the innocent from Israel, so that they may go well with you. So the elders are supposed to take him from the city, get people to deliver him to the avenger of blood. And again, it goes back to Genesis 9, verse 16. And the commentary that I was looking, murder was deemed as an assault on God himself, an ultimate act of insubordination and rebellion. And then in Deuteronomy 19 through 10, it says, so innocent blood shall not be shed, in the midst of your land, which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and guilt for bloodshed will not be on you. So again, I go through all that to establish a point here, and we're going to we're finally getting to that point. So what do the cities of refuge purpose to be, is supposed to be a picture for? Right there.
In a literal sense, it appears to me it's kind of, that's not a spiritual side. Maybe that's what you're looking for. But in
Looking for a spiritual, but go ahead. Go ahead.
in a literal sense, it's almost a holding cell. That's a big holding cell that they're held in until they have a trial, until they go before the elders to find out what's going on. So, like I said, that's what comes into my mind in a literal sense, but I'll let somebody else tackle the spiritual side.
Okay. All right. Anybody? All right. I'm just going to reveal it then. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Alex.
Well, I almost feel like it's spiritually, speaking. We're all, if we're trying to relate it to us, we all have this sin that we have, and we are looking for this refuge. It's like, where's our refuge? And that's in Christ.
Yep.
I imagine.
Exactly. Alex got it. Alex again gets the gold star today. And a couple of the verses that I looked at, and we can look at Psalms 46, verse 1. God is our refuge and our strength, a very ready help in trouble. And then in Hebrews 6, verse 18, that by two unchangeable sayings in which it is impossible for God to lie, he who have taken refuge would have strong encouragement to hold firmly to the hope set before them. Again, giving us that picture that Jesus is our refuge. He's the person that we're seeking. He's the person where we're going, because we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and so we seek after him. Okay? So, I'm going to give you all about 5 minutes, and I want y'all to talk amongst each other. What are the similarities between the cities of refuge and the refuge that the believers find in Jesus Christ? And so take time to talk about that amongst yourself, and then I will give you what my list is. Okay? So, there we go. I'm back up. So, go ahead. Terry.
Jesus, as they had established cities of refuge for the one who accidentally slays a person, Jesus is our refuge from all sin, and that we seek forgiveness. He will be able to forgive us of our sins as we strive to obey him.
Yep. Right.
Well, what I see here is that the similarity is the refuge. Obviously, in the physical sense, under the law of Moses, they could give refuge to those who had innocently shed blood, and it's Christ that gives refuge. But what I see is the difference. Under the law of Moses, the one who did it did not intend to do harm, and therefore is innocent in that way. In Christ, though, it is the guilty who did intend to do harm, who did intend to commit the sin like King David, and still can find forgiveness and refuge in Christ.
Anybody else? All right. And I will give me my six that I have here. Again, the cities of refuge were within easy reach of the needy person, just as Jesus is in easy reach for all of us. Okay, they set them up strategically so that people could get them there easily, just as Jesus set up our path to him very easily. And as it talked about there, and I went into this a little bit, is the roads that led to the refuge. They were gotten rid of debris. They were all those kind of things. Now, sometimes it always isn't that easy for us to get there, But again, when we're truly seeking Jesus, I think it is easy to get there and get where we need to be. The next one is the cities of refuge are open to all, not just the Israelites. They were for anybody that had done this. Okay? So again, that's the same as Jesus is for everybody. He's that refuge for everyone around us. All right. The next one. The cities of refuge became a place where the one in need would live. Someone in need didn't come to a city of refuge to casually visit. And I think that relates to us. Again, we don't just go to Jesus casually as we seek him out. That's where we're going, and that's where we want to be, okay? Each one of us that's been there, that's going there. Next one is the cities of refuge were the only alternative for the one in need. Without the special protection, they would be destroyed. The person, the blood avenger or the avenger of blood would come after them and kill them no matter what happened if they didn't have these cities of refuge. The cities of refuge provided protections only within their boundaries. Okay, again, to go outside meant death. To go outside of Jesus means death. Again, that's again relating to the whole cities of refuge, is that within Jesus we have protection, but if we go outside, it is surely death for us. With the cities of refuge, full freedom from the death of the high priest. Again, Jesus is our refuge and our high priest. So that's how I related it to the refuge, the cities of refuge, and why it's so important that we kind of look at them, because it's a place where people could go to get away from the things that we're going to go, that the avenger of blood. Jesus is a place where we can go to be away from that also, so because of our sins. All right, waging of war, okay? Again, in chapter 20, it starts talking about how they're supposed to wage war and what's supposed to happen before they go into war. There's a couple of things here that we're going to talk about specifically, and it says in Deuteronomy 20, verse 1, it says, when you go out to battle against your enemy and see horses, chariots, and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God, who brought you up from the land of Egypt, is with you. So the first thing that I'm going to point out is not to be afraid, okay? Again, they were not to be afraid of what was about to come up with this. And I think the bigger point is they were going to go against armies that were going to be bigger than them, have more stuff than they did, but they were never supposed to be afraid of what was about to happen. So what's the application for us? Not to be afraid, okay? Again, I think God, Jesus tells us that several times in our lives that we're not supposed to be afraid, again. And I'm going to give you an example of something in my life that I think that had a profound impact on me, but when I was going through it, I was not afraid. And people asked me, you weren't afraid? I said, no, wasn't afraid. Again, last year, or it's almost been 2 years now, had an altercation with a guy. We're wrestling around on the ground. He gets my gun, and basically says to me, what you going to do about this? And so we wrestle with the gun. The gun does go off at one point, and I eventually get the gun away from him and get him in handcuffs, and that was the end of the altercation. Now, most of the people would have thought, weren't you afraid during that? Like, I wasn't. Yeah, that's one of the reasons. Now, when I called my wife, I was very afraid. All I could say to her was, I'm okay. I'm okay. And she's like, what are you okay with? I was like, I'm just okay. And then I got home that night, and she was like, well, you really never told me what happened. You just said you were okay. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll explain all what happened. But during the indication, I was not afraid of what was about to happen to me. I took care of the situation. Again, I think it goes back to training and everything else. And as we're going through things in our lives, because we're all going through something, God tells us continually throughout the Bible not to be afraid of those things, that He's going to take care of us. In Joshua 1:9 it says, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified nor dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." Okay? Talking specifically to Joshua. Go ahead.
Very interesting that you used the word that your training prepared you for it,
Mm-hmm.
because training, and how do we get training as Christians? It prepares us for these situations. So I thought it was interesting you used that word that you were able to fall back on your training. We also need to fall back on our training.
Yep. So, again, good point. And then Romans 8, verse 31, it says, and then shall we say that these things, if God is with us, who is against us? Again, I think sometimes when we're going through these struggles in our life, we like to internalize them. We like to almost play the pity party. I mean, I do it a lot. I play the pity party with myself. Oh, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why is this going through this? But we have to trust God that we're going through it, that there's a reason why we're going through it, and to trust Him that He's going to get us through it, and that He's going to get it through us successfully. So again, as they're waging war here, He's telling them, don't be afraid. I'm with y'all. You do not have to be afraid, even if the army's larger than you. And then He reminds them of when they were exiting Egypt. What did the Pharaoh do? He chased after them with chariots and horses. And what did God do? When it seemed insurmountable, He opened the sea, and they went across it, and they were safe. Okay? So, the next point I want to make in waging war is the size of the group is not important to God. Okay? In Deuteronomy 25 through 9, it says, "The officers also shall speak to the people, saying, Who is a man that has built a new house, but has not dedicated it? Let him go and return to his house, and otherwise he might die in the battle, and another man would dedicate it. And who is the man who has planted a vineyard, but has not put it to use? Let him go and return to his house, otherwise he might die." Otherwise it might die in the battle, and another man would put it to use. "And who is the man who is betrothed to a woman and has not married her? Let him go and return to his house, otherwise he might die in the battle, and another man would marry her. Then the officers shall speak further to the people and say, Who is the man that is afraid and faint-hearted? Let him go and return to his house, so that he does not make his brother's hearts melt like his heart. And when the officers have finished speaking to the people, they shall appoint commanders of armies at the head of the people." The commentary says, to God, the size of the army was not more important than the hearts of the army. Yahweh didn't want soldiers who might be distracted by worries about the cares of everyday life, nor did Yahweh want people who did not really trust Him. God could do more through a smaller army and truly commit to Him when through a bigger army that was full of compromise. Okay? So the size really doesn't matter to God when they're going into war. They're going to go against people that are going to be bigger than them. Sometimes they're going to be the bigger in the fight, but it never matters. And what's an example of this in the Bible? Gideon. Okay? Yep. In Judges 7, we see that Gideon is asked to reduce his numbers from 32,000 people down to a minimal size of 300. Okay? To go against the Midianite army of 135,000 people. Because why? Their strengths. Yep. Okay. And so, again, sometimes a lot of, I've been in large congregations of 200 to 300 people. I've been in small congregations when there was only 10 people out there. Sometimes I go and teach, go and preach at my father's where he preaches, and it's only about 10 people. And they're all older than me by quite some age. But again, is God concerned about those things? Great things can be done by large groups. Great things can be done by small groups. Great things can be done because why? God's in control of it all. Okay, we have to do our part, our training, as was alluded to earlier. But God is there with us, for us. I didn't put this on my slide. But what are the things I stated in here? I've been in groups of 200 to 300 people. We're about 150 strong, give or take. Again, that did not have as many men serving in worship that we do here. Again, I'm always amazed at how many men that get up there and the different men that get up there and are willing to do things in the worship service or teach classes. And I know the elders and Daniel and Steve really work on preparing the next generation coming up. I mean, they have a lot of teaching classes and everything else, and I want to commend them for that because I'm also amazed at how this congregation is the giving of their hearts. When there's an email that goes out that somebody's in need, usually there's not much effort that has to be given after that. There's people that will respond to that need and give. And then all the Bible classes that we have and all the things we're doing. Again, it doesn't matter how strong we are, how small we are. It just matters what we're doing towards God, and God will do the rest. All right. Waging war in Deuteronomy 20, verse 2 through 4. It also talks about that they're supposed to encourage each other. Again, and I'm not going to read through that, but again, it talks about how they're supposed to go out there and encourage one another so that they can make it through this fight. And the question I have in all this is, who is to be our encouragement? Each other is one, okay? And then who's the other one? Not that hard. Jesus, God, is supposed to be our encouragement, okay? I'm speeding this up a little bit because I think I'm running out of time here. So both of those groups are supposed to be an encouragement and uplift each other so that we can get to the next place. A lot of us, as we're going through difficulties, we get discouraged. We get overwhelmed with them. And it's always nice to have people come up to us and encourage us. I know through the first couple of classes when I was up here, I kind of struggled through. I was barely getting through them. I was sweating after I was getting out of here. I was like, just get me over this, guys. Just get me out of here, And there's been a couple of people that came up to me and said, hey, you're doing fine. Just keep going. Just keep going through it and you'll get there. And so I appreciate that there's others uplifting me and the things that are going on here. Last one, other Christians, again, Jesus. All right. And then the last point I'll make about how to battle was found in Deuteronomy 20, 10 through 15. I'm not going to read through all that because, again, I'm running out of time. Israel cannot be conducted in any way conceivable or in any way that might bring victory. It was important for the Israelites did not fight unnecessarily. Again, that they didn't just go to a fight because they wanted to fight. It was all for a reason. And again, and so I believe that's almost to the end. Okay, today in 1 Corinthians 9, verse 24, it says, do not know that those who run the race will all run, but the one who receives the prize run in such a way that may win. Okay, I'm missing the point here, and I'm sorry about that, guys. I was trying to hurry through. And that what you shall do, all the cities that are very far. Sorry. basically it's how to fight and how to win the war, okay? Is what the point that I was trying to make here is how they're supposed to do it in a manner that God has prescribed to them and not their own way of doing war, okay? And so that's why I use the verse of 1 Corinthians 9, verse 24. Again, we have a right way of doing the wars that are coming our way and a wrong way of doing them. We have to follow what God's telling us to do and not just do it our own way, okay? And that's the same with 1 Timothy 2, verse 5. And if someone likewise competes as an athlete, he is not crowned as a victor unless he competes according to the rules, okay? All right. Last part of this is, again, Deuteronomy 19, 5 through 20. It talks about some additional legal principles here, that anytime that you go against somebody, you're supposed to bring 2 or 3 witnesses, okay? He gives them that order that they can't just take it on the respect of one. They have to have 2 or 3 that come forward to them. What is that related to us in the New Testament? Go ahead, Brian. Yes, yep. That we have to have 2 or 3, okay, come with us. That we just don't do it by ourselves. I think that's a key lesson for us in our world today, because how many times do we jump on the bandwagon when we don't even know all the facts? And we say, oh, this person's guilty, but we don't really know they're guilty. A prime example of this is early on in my life, there was one of Trey's friends, his dad was accused by his soon-to-be ex-wife that he'd beat her and her son. And we went to a small Christian school, so everybody jumped on the bandwagon and said, oh, it's true, it's got to be true. He did it. It was found out later that she had lied about the whole thing. And that's why we have to be very careful about jumping on the bandwagons with everybody else and researching the evidence. And, you know, I went to him and told him straight out, I'm still your friend, but if I find out what you did is true, then I'm no longer going to be your friend, okay? And that's how we operated. And so, again, that's pretty much the end. I have a couple of more points, but if you want to, y'all can look at them later. But so, next time it will be Alex up and the miscellaneous laws. Thank y'all.